My name is Mark Ewert, and today's lesson is on parent and family involvement during transition planning. My name is Mark Ewert, and today's lesson is on parent and family involvement during transition planning. The objectives for this lesson are to learn how parents and families are key components for a successful transition for students with special needs, to understand what barriers exist for family involvement during transition planning, and to learn what strategies are available to help keep parents and families involved before, during, and after transition planning. The voice of youth with disabilities and their parents are clear and strong. Parents have spent many years raising their child and preparing him or her for the time when they can transition into an independent adult. Depending on the disability, being independent may take on many different forms, but there's always one main goal that drives them, and that is the focus on a future filled with opportunities. However, the rite of passage for students with disabilities, marking the transition from childhood to adulthood, is not always a smooth and easily navigated journey. This is true for both the student and his family. As a student reaches the age of majority, he will begin to take on more responsibility. For the first time, he is asked to start making decisions regarding his IEP and start making transition choices independently from his parents. This can be an emotional and challenging parting between parents and the independence of their child. But it does not have to be this way. A results-oriented transition process is designed to address the unique challenges that a student with disabilities may face as he comes of age and begins to accept more of the responsibilities associated with adulthood. This includes a framework that should prepare the student with disabilities for secondary education, employment, and independent living. This development requires collaboration with parents to reach high levels of success. One of the most comprehensive, research-based, and widely accepted frameworks for transition is the taxonomy programming. The taxonomy draws on 5 key areas for success: transition-focused programming and outcome-oriented planning process. One of the key components is family involvement for student-focused planning. Transition to adulthood is an important stage in life. This is true not only for the student with disabilities, but also his parents. Parents need to remain a consistent person in their child's life. They can provide reassurance to their child as he steps out into his own. For this reason, parents play a central role in determining services. This allows the parent the opportunity to be a strong advocate for and link with the services that can help enhance their child's future and quality of life. Allowing parents to be closely involved with transition planning leads to high post-secondary education and employment success, which all contribute to an overall higher quality of life for the student with disabilities. Post-secondary education. Higher education options are often a component of planning for transition, and for students with intellectual disabilities, a number of specialized PSE programs exist. These programs are becoming increasingly available, and families of students are increasingly considering these options. Keeping parents instrumental in transition planning can improve the approaches taken by educator and service providers. Unfortunately, sometimes parents are not considered as such an integral part of the transition planning team. Parents who are not involved as essential partners on the planning team lack the knowledge of the service system. When this occurs, parents of students with disabilities are unsure what their role is during the planning process and can feel powerless to advocate for services. Parents in these situations have an overwhelming sense of uselessness because of unfamiliar transition terms, procedures, and unexpected barriers. While some schools offer special transition training for parents of children with disabilities, many do not. The transition period is a delicate and emotional time with students that cannot afford to lose their parents as that consistent person in their lives. Educators need to be sensitive of this fact, as it may lead to an uncomfortable transition for students. School personnel need to continue to find ways to create more opportunities for parents of children with disabilities to get involved with the transition planning process. This is especially critical for parents of children with severe intellectual disabilities. These students are the least likely to be involved in job training, paid employment, or education after high school. Cultural and linguistic diversity. Challenges faced by families of students with disabilities can be further complicated when they are from a different culture or speak a different language. There are 7 identified barriers that can inhibit or prevent parental involvement in transition planning. Power imbalance, psychological or attitudinal barriers, logistic barriers, information barriers, communication barriers, socioeconomic status and contextual factors, and cultural influences. Schools can tend to view students as autonomous individuals, while parents can view their children as embedded in the family. In some situations, parents felt as though educators devalue the parents' knowledge of their own children. The absence of a shared perspective can lead to confusion and disagreement. Educators must be mindful that the information shared by parents about their children is useful. Statistically, families with a member who has a disability are more likely to have lower median incomes, higher poverty rates, and a higher dependency on Social Security benefits and public assistance. These parents often find it difficult to fulfill family roles and face many barriers to community living and participation. This is due to inaccessible housing and community that make it difficult for a person with disabilities to live with his or her family or to participate in community activities. These barriers can also hinder involvement for caregivers and lead to poor access to appropriate health care. Parents and their children with disabilities do not always perceive their needs, opportunities, or resources in the same way. It is very important to involve the student more intimately in the planning of his IEP much earlier in his education career. When students, educators, and parents begin to actively plan the student's education together earlier than traditionally attempted, the stronger and more aligned their ideals will have become. Students who are more actively involved in his IEP planning earlier are better prepared and knowledgeable when it comes time for transition planning. Students who are actively involved in their educational planning are more likely to achieve their goals. Some school districts provide transition training for parents, but more is needed. Too many parents are underinformed on all the components for transition planning for their child. Schools that do not offer additional training for parents are losing a valuable resource unless training is offered. In addition to training, schools need to better inform parents of long-term funding through the State Developmental Disabilities Agency and Medicaid waivers, and to prepare families for changes as community rehabilitation providers, CRP, continue to fade out facility-based work options and provide only supported employment. In addition, to better support parent involvement in transition planning, educators need to promote positive communication to parents. Effective educational experiences for students with disabilities receiving special education services depend on the parents' involvement, which indicates the need for effective collaboration. Educators should ask parents for input on transition planning and offer a variety of opportunities to communicate ideas. Be ready to support parents who do not speak English or are from a different culture. Make an effort to understand and respect the cultural differences. Above all, be flexible with scheduling meetings and use alternate forms of communication such as phone calls or emails. Next, you will see a short video of real-life parents sharing their views and opinions of the transition planning process.
Well, transitioning to life after high school is tough enough, and it can be even more challenging for students with disabilities. But for those families, it's one thing a community council in La Crosse says they don't have to do alone. It's planning for the inevitable.
At the age of 17, 18, do they really know what they want to do?
Life after graduation. But for Michelle Mahalovic and her son Jordan, diagnosed with autism, that planning definitely has some challenges.
Were you scared because you don't know what the future holds?
Yeah.
Were you scared because you know you're a little bit different than everybody else?
Mm-hmm.
But what has Mom always told you?
Do the best.
Do the best you can.
Did you make your own egg sandwiches?
Yes.
You're a good chef.
And for Teresa Hulls and her son Aaron, born with Down syndrome, it's planning that needs to start early.
Transition came when I knew that he was going to be going from a child to an adult. And so I started seeking out the information that I needed for him to have and to have the resources available for him, because once Aaron turns 18, he is considered an adult.
But for both of these families, every day has its struggles and its pleasant surprises. And it's no different when it comes to planning for their child's future. Both moms say it's one thing they don't have to do alone.
I think that when you first are thinking about what is my child going to do once they turn 18 and they're into the adult world, it's scary. What's going to happen next? What's going to be out there for my child?
Both families are taking advantage of help from the La Crosse County Transition Advisory Council with things like independent living, personal counseling, and employment resources in the community to prepare for when their sons hit that milestone age of 18.
You start making plans for your kids on what they want to do.
It's not necessarily scary. I think that there's just more planning that you have to do.
That way, both moms can rest assured their sons will live healthy and fulfilling lives.
Somebody asked me once if I could change my kid, and I would never change him. God gave him to me this way for a reason.
The diagnosis, nobody wants to hear until you have it. And once you realize there's so much beauty and in these special needs people, you just live your life like you normally would. You know, it's no different.
The La Crosse County Transitional Advisory Council is having a conference for families who are interested in